Okay, we're on Ayin Hey Amid Aleph, right? We are 3 lines down. Ayin Hey Amid Aleph V'tilsa Kroi B'Truma Lamali. We had 3 psukim that basically told me the same thing, that a person can eat truma. Let's go over the psukim. Ish mizera aroin v'hu tzarua oizav b'kotshim lo yoichal adashe yitar. And we said this is speaking about a zav of 2 re'iyos with a certain mitzvah muchlit, musker, and they don't bring a carbon, and that's how we prove this, speaking about full yoim. And that says b'kodesh lo yoichal, and it's speaking a lot about truma. The second pasuk was uba shemesh v'taher v'yacha yochel min hakotshim. Uba shemesh, the shemesh will come, the taher, and then it'll be taher, and then you'll be kotshim. That's the second pasuk. The shlishi, the third pasuk, the chol kodesh leisiga ad meloisi mei tahira. So we have one pasuk that says that the kotshim yochel period until you become tahar. A second pasuk that says when the shemesh comes, and the third pasuk by Yoleda says you mostly made tahira. So the Gemara wants to tilsa kroi. Why do you need these 3 psukim? By what? By telling me it's the same thing that they can't eat truma. Says the Gemara tzricha. The ma'ara she yitar. If you just bring the pasuk, oh, here's the birthday boy. Okay, Lenny, we just began the Gemara 3 lines down on Ayin Hey. 3 psukim by truma. We have 3 psukim that tell us the same thing by truma, that you can't eat truma, that a tamidik person can't eat truma. So tzricha, 4 lines down. The ima arashe yita, the pasuk until you tahar, like havi adanu b'mai. In other words, you can't eat until you tahar, but you wouldn't know what's the vehicle for making you tahar. You wouldn't know what the vehicle making you tahar is. It just says until you tahar, you can't eat truma. Therefore, kasav rachmana uba shemesh v'taher. The sun sets and then you tahar. So you see it's the setting of the sun. Again, this is at full yaim with Herav Shemesh Kri Truma. If you would just write that pasuk, Hani Mili Delav Bar Kapara. That's a person who doesn't bring a carbon. The Bar Kapara, a person who's Mechusik Kippurim, someone who has an internal tuma. Ema Adamaisi Kapara. I would say he couldn't eat Truma until he brings his carbon. Kamash Malon by Shemesh, with the setting of the sun, he eats the carbon. So so therefore, the Torah writes ad Yemosimei until he's finished. Because Rachmana ad Melois have amina fila blay tefila, that as soon as he finishes his days, he doesn't need tefila. Because Rachmana ad asher yitar. So they have, and therefore what we have a tzricha for the 3 psukim. Now we learned the other day, fellas, that how do we know that it's full yom? We learned that ish kiyeh tzrua oizav. And we said, how do we know it's speaking about truma? And how do we know it's speaking about, maybe it's speaking about kotshim? Says the Gemara, it's not speaking about kotshim because it's speaking about a person that can't bring a carbon. Who's the person who can't bring a carbon? A zav who saw two sightings, and a mitzvah that they put away, they weren't mishor. It was mitzvah muchlit, right? A musker that was put away. So therefore, since they're not a kapara, obviously the only thing that could be kapara is bahashemesh, and therefore it can't be speaking about kotshim. It has to be speaking truma. There's another opinion that pasuk is speaking about a zav that saw 3 times, and that pasuk is speaking about a mitzvah that was muchlit. He was a positive mitzvah. So both of those are bringing karbanos, and therefore, how do you know truma is what is bahashemesh? Maybe is what. Maybe you have to go ahead and bring a carbon before you eat truma if you're tamei. That's the next piece of Gemara. The Tana, the Rabbi Shmuel, and the Tana that argues on the Yeshir Rabbi Shmuel, the Omar, who says, Bizov, the pasuk is speaking about a Zov, Bal Gimel Re'iyos, who sees 3, and therefore he has to bring a carbon, Uva Mitzayra Muchlit, and a Mitzayra that is what has been pronounced Tameh for sure, and he has to bring a carbon, Akosim Medaber, V'hai Ad Shayita, Ad Maisi Kapara, and therefore Shayita means that what? You bring a Kapara, Trey Kroy B'Kotchim Lamali. Why do I need 2 psukim to teach me that you can't eat kotchim? Says my tzricha. Because Rachmana b'yoledes. If you write only by the yoledes, mishum de meruba b'tumasa. Since what? Since she's meruba b'tumasa, she has she's meruba b'tumasa that 70, 80 days and 40 days. So it's a very long period of time. Therefore, until after she brings the carbon. Aval bizav emaloi, because Rachmana bizav, the loy huta mechlalai. He's never, during his period of Tumah, there's never a heta. Aval yoledes emaloi, but yoledes, after 7 days for a boy, she's mutter to her husband. After 14 days for a girl, she's mutter to her husband. So there is a hutter bichlal kala. It's within the framework of a tfelis yoim, there is a heta for tashmish. So tzricha tell me, no, even there, you can't eat. Okay. Now, there's the next pasuk says, "B'mayim yuva v'tomei ada erev." B'mayim you'll be brought v'tomei ada erev. Normally, why do you have to write that pasuk? Right? Why do you have to write the pasuk of b'yom yuva v'tomei ada erev? You already said, right? It already said that ubo hashemish v'taher. In other words, once you said, guys, ubo hashemish v'taher. So what's this pasuk telling me? And you're telling me what? He'll be in water and tummy ada erev. I know what, guys. What's the difference between Ubo Hashemesh ada erev? It's the same thing. Ubo Hashemesh is when the sun sets. Ada erev is when the sun sets. It's telling me the same thing. What do you need that for? Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Seira linigia. I need that to tell me that you can't touch that you cannot touch it. The Tanya, the tamei, yitame, yachol l'chol. I may think. You're tummy for everything. Again, it's a funny pasuk. It says Uba Shemesh v'taher. What does the pasuk say? The pasuk says the pasuk says V'chol asher yipol love mehem b'ma'isam any sherets yitma mikol eitz v'gegen or b'sok kli asher yasam v'lachem mehem b'mayim yuba v'tamei ara erev v'taher. So when it says it's tamei al erev v'taher, and then what does that mean? Doesn't it v'yitar it'll become tamei? It's mashmitz tar now. So we have something that's tamei and tahar. It doesn't say it's tamei v'yitar and then it'll be cleansed. It says it's tamei and it's tahar. How do you reconcile something that's tamei v'tar? Ivitar yachal l'chol tamalei v'tamei. Okay, tzad kan lemaiser. You're at full yoin. You're mutter to eat meiser. Then kan l'truma, but possible for truma. Let's say your truma, your tamei, your tahar, and for ma'aser your tamei. Says mistabra ki hechi de chamira achila de tmura me achila de ma'aser hanami chamira nigia de truma me nigia de ma'aser. We know that the chumra of truma that is more chomer. The chumra of truma is more chomer. What you need harav shemesh ma'aser you could eat right away. So just like we're more machmer le'inyan. The eating of truma vis-a-vis tuma, who adin le'inyan, this is speaking negia of tuma. That in other words, guys, if it's full yoim would touch truma, it will be tamei. If it's full yoim would touch maisa, it would not be tamei. So why? Because it's full yoim cannot eat truma. So just like we're more chomer with its full yoim le'inyan truma, who adin we're more chomer le'inyan touching it, just eating it, touching it. So therefore, it's not a svara to say. Another teretz. How do you know it's speaking about truma, not ma'aser? We learn from here. The pasuk says, "The chol kodesh loy siga." The pasuk says, "U'shloisha yom u'shloisha yomim." This is speaking about a yoledes. For 33 days, teishay b'mei tahara. B'chol kodesh loy siga. She can't touch any kodesh. V'lemigdash loy savai ad melois yimei tahara. Says, "Maras hara lo oichel." Is this halacha for eating or touching? And every kodesh you shouldn't touch, and to the migdash you shouldn't come in. Makish kodesh lemigdash. Ma migdash makish the act of the piece that's kodesh now to the migdash. Now, fellas, when you walk into the base of migdash, you're chayiv kares. If you touch kodshim, you're not chayiv kares. If you're tummy and you eat the kodesh, you are chayiv. So they're giving my druthers. If I'm going to go ahead and say, am I chayiv for eating or touching? I'm going to say eating. Why? Because that's a parallel to going to the base of Mikdash, because it carries the same severe sentence of kares. Says the Gemara. So makish kodesh lemigdash. Ma migdash davar sheish bo netilas neshama. Just like going to the big base of Mikdash is something speaking about that is chayiv kares. Af kodesh. So too when it speaks about eating, touching kodesh davar sheish bo netilas neshama. So it says l'chol kodesh le'siga, guys, but it really means achila, correct? Because you're not chayiv for negia. U'benegia netilas neshama leka. The haida afke b'loshin negiya. So if it's speaking about eating, why do you use the loshin of negiya? It says hachi kama. Here's what it's saying: negiya ke'achila. Negiya, touching is like achila, right? Just like achila, you can't. So too, you can't touch it. It's full yom, can't touch it. And that ends the whole sugya that we got into of truma and maisa and oral and oinin and b'chus kippurim. These are all big. This is all shas. These are all ideas that come up in shas. Now, the next sugya is not something that comes up in shas. It's a close sugya. And as we go through the sugya, you'll see why I'm going very, very quickly. It's the sugya of layavai pitsua daka v'krush shafla b'kal Hashem. A pitsua daka is a person. These two people cannot have children. They can't have children. They have problems. They can't be moiled children. They're not allowed to marry into Kal Hashem. The Gemara is going to go through exactly what they are, and it's needless to say, some of the things are a bit odd. But we'll go through them very, very quickly. Just one thing, it's important to know that I always thought a P'tsua Daka is one person and Krush Shafcha is another person. They're not. A Krush Shafcha is one person. That means the gid, the aver of the male, is cut. The P'tsua Daka is two things. It's P'tsua, he's wounded, Daka, or it's crushed. That's what it means. P'tsua means wounded, Daka means crushed, and it means in his beitzah. So says the Gemara. We saw the following, that if a P'tsua Daka and a Krush Shafcha is married, so his wife cannot eat truma because they're not supposed to be married. They're not supposed to be married, right? They're not supposed to be married, and therefore when he lives with her, it makes her a zayna. She's a halal. She can't eat. What happens if they're married and he never consummated the marriage? In other words, they were married. He did consummate the marriage, but from the time, as we're going to see, guys, a Krush Shafcha is only one bidei other, not bidei shemayim. So he gets married, then he becomes a Krush Shafcha, and then he didn't live with her yet. So the Mishnah said then she could eat truma. Now this is comparable to a Mishnah we had in Daf Nun Vav, that a kohen to a gerusha, would she eat or not? Would it pass or not? In other words, let's say she's a bas kohen, she's a garush, right? Would that passel her for? What was the case over there? Nun Vav. Let me see. Just 1 second. I want to remind myself. There's Nun Vav on the base. The Mishnah said, "Almanu l'kohen gadol gush v'chulitz l'kohen hedyet min ha'erisin lo yoichle b'truma." The erisin they won't eat truma. They won't. In other words, they won't be fed truma. They won't be. Reb Lezer b'Shimon machshirin. Okay, what was the machlokes whether you could feed them truma or not? But the mishtameres lebia psula is passels or not. In other words, right now they're married. You gave kiddushin, and she, for all intents and purposes, is the wife of a kohen. We know the wife of a kohen is kinyan kasboy, and you could eat. However, once the marriage is consummated, she's a halala, and they can't eat. So this is the case of mishtameres. She's waiting lebia psula. So there's no difference, guys, between a P'tsua Daka, because it says Layavai P'tsua Daka v'Krush Shafcha b'Kal Hashem, and it says that a kohen can't marry a gerusha. It's the exact same case. So in this case, the Mishnah said if she's waiting and they haven't lived together yet, she could eat truma. So obviously, our Mishnah holds Mishtameres Lebia P'sula eats truma. Of course, if it's our Mishnah, that's what our Mishnah said. Says the Gemara. P'tsua Daka, man Tana Mishtameres Lebia P'sula. Who's the Tana who holds a woman that's waiting for a Bia P'sula? The Araisa Achla she would eat. Like this case in the P'tsua Daka, she would eat. It's the machlokes that we just saw. Reb Shimon he. And it goes to Reb Meir, the Tana Reb Meir said, Mishtameres Bia P'sula does not eat. And we said in our Mishnah over there, Reb Lezer Shimon Machshirin. So that's the same shita over here as we just saw in Daf Nun Vav. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, I feel a time Reb Meir. Reb Meir who says over there by Kohen Gadol and by Kohen that you don't eat is shiny hacha shekvar achla. It's different over here because they already ate. She already ate before he became a Krush Shafcha. Rebbe Laza shekvar achla yamin. Won't say that. The leitem hachi. If you do say that, Bas Yisrael shenisas the Kohen. Bas Yisrael that marries a Kohen who makes and he dies. Meis baila toicha she should eat shekvar achla. Rabbi Yochanan, what's the difference between that case? Hasam paka kinyana, hachale paka kinyana. Over there, the kinyan ended. Therefore, she can't eat anymore, despite the fact she ate before. Hashenkin over here, the kinyan did not end. They're still married. And since the Mishnah is to be a psula and she already ate, she can continue eating. So you're not locked into saying our Mishnah here is according to Reb Shimon. Our Mishnah here could be even according to Rabbi Meir. Ezeb psuadaka is kushach b'tan rabbanan. Ezeb psuadaka kol sheniftu beitzim shalois. Beitzim are wounded. Vafilu achsmen, even one of them. Vafilu nikfu, even if one of them has a hole that goes straight through. Vafilu nemuko, even if it was hit and they became smaller. Vafilu chasru, even if missing a piece. I'm Rabbi Shmuel ben Oishel Berchen Broika. Shemati mipi chachamim b'keren b'yavne. They used to sit like a vineyard. Kol she'en le'el beitza achas. Anyone who has in one beitza, any other sris chama. He's considered sris chama. Machlok is what a sris chama is. Literally the sun. See, some people say that it's that he was born that way, that he never saw the sun in a healthy light, or that's simply that what that he got a sickness. The kasha, sris chama salkadaitach. How could you probably think that what that this person is a sris chama? Sris chama is b'dei shemayim as a result, and this is not a sickness. Rashi holds sris chama is a sickness. El harihu kisris chama. He's like a sris chama. The kasha. He'd be like a sris chama and it'd be kasha. V'nikav lo yimoyli. Fred Gemara, you just told me that he can't have a child because he has a hole in his beitza. Hahu gaved, it was this person, this individual, the solik ledikla, who ascended a tree. V'charze silu b'beitzim, and he had a thorn penetrated his beitzim. V'nafik minei kechut de megula, came out an oozing liquid. V'oilin, nonetheless, he had children. It says Hashalach chamei the Rav. They sent a Shmuel sent in front of Rav. V'amalei, Rav said, "Say v'chaz v'albanim, go check out his children. Me'ein heim, where they're from, because obviously, if she had children, it's not from this man." Amar Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel, b'tzua daka b'dei shemayim kasha. A b'tzua daka b'dei shemayim is kasha. This is, to me, I have a kasha. I don't understand. I haven't found the teretz. I found the mahalach. It's very. If the whole reason he can't marry is because he can't have children, regardless the siba, the cause, whether it's b'dei shemayim b'dei adam, it should make a difference. I didn't see anyone speak about it. Okay. There's a very funny Sefer HaChinuch I just mentioned. I looked it up. The Sefer HaChinuch says, he doesn't say because of Moilid. He says an odd thing. He says, listen to what he says. This is what he says. That the kings, when they would have a harem, so the person in charge of the harem, they would go ahead and make him unable to have relations because they wanted him to be, make sure that they're only for him. So the Sefer HaChinuch says the reason why a Psuadaka can't marry is we're worried a person may want to get that job to endear himself to the king, so he'd be willing to do this. That's what he says. It's at least would answer the question why it's a bidei adam dikadin, not a bidei shemayim dikadin. It would answer that question. Okay. Anyway, weiter. Anyways, as I said, I'm Rabbi Yehuda Shmuel. Psuadaka b'dei shemayim kasha. It's kasha. That's the halacha. I looked up the halacha. That's the halacha. Amar Rav Hainu de karina b'tzua v'lei karina ha'pitzua. That's the reason we call it pitzua, which is masma now versus hapitzua all along. It's mesisan tana nema lo yave pitzua v'nema lo yave mamza. Mala halim b'dei adam, just like a mamza is created b'dei adam, afkan b'dei adam, so too psuadaka is b'dei adam. Amar Rava psuadaka. Okay, again, remember I told you guys there are three things over here. There's three things. There's ptsua, there's daka, and there's chorus. There is wounded, there is crushed, and there is cut. And it's in three places. It's in the gid itself, or in the beitzim themselves, or the chut of the beitzim. The chut is the connection between the beitza and the gid, which is misvashal. It cooks up it keeps the liquid hot that it's able to zeret, able to have a child. So this is it's an ambiguous statement that I just explained to you. Says the Gemara. Here it is. It says, Amar Rava, ptsua bekulon, dach bekulon, chorus bekulon. Now bekulon is referring to the different organs that are involved over here. Those three organs. So it's either one of three things. It's ptsua in any one of them, it's dach in any one of them, or it's chorus in any one of them. As the Gemara now explains. Bein shenifza hagid, bein shenifzu bebeitzim, bein shenifzu chutei beitzim. Dach bekulon, bein shenidach hagid, it's crushed. Bein shenitchu beitzim, bein shenitchu chutei beitzim. Krus bekulon, bein shenichras hagid, bein shenichos beitzim, bein shenichos uchuti beitzim. It goes through the three ways in three different places. How do you know Ptsua Daka is Boisei Makon? Maybe it means the guy who has a crushed head can't come Kal Hashem. So Amalei Midalei Mana Bei Doiris. When they don't count Doiris. In other words, it says by Mitzri, it says what? It says by Mitzri, it says that the first generation, second generation can't come in, third generation come in. But over here, it doesn't count doiris. Why? Because there are no doiris. So obviously, what? If you get crushed in your head, it's not necessarily going to stop you from procreating. Mashenkin, Suadaka will. Shmamina b'yisemakom. Fred Gemara v'dilma haidlei mona but doiris. Maybe the reason we didn't count generations, the Yehuda asa, he would be asa, but brei ubabarei kasha. In other words, it means he got zetzt in the head. He got zetzt in the head. He can have children, so he can't marry in. Right? But his children could marry in. Says the Gemara. Dumya the krushavcha. That Suadaka must be comparable to Krushavcha. Not Krushavcha by say Makam, just like Krushavcha refers to in that area of the body, Af Hainami by say Makam, so to the Suadaka is in that area of the body. Fred the Gemara the Krushavcha Gufa, by say Makam, how do you Krushavcha means that place? It says Misvase, maybe it means your lip, a cut lip. It says Shavcha Kasiv. It's Masma Shavcha that right, the Makam Sheshoifech. By the when a person spits, it expectorates, it shoots out. Mashen Kane, over here, where it's cut, it's not going to shoot out anymore, it's going to drip out. So maybe it's speaking about dripping, it's speaking about his nose. Maybe a person who has a nose drip can't come to Kal Hashem. Mikasiv b'shafach karis, b'shafach siv. That mashma that all along he wasn't able to. Mashen Kane over here, Misha they crease a shofech through the injury that he occurs. Now it's shofech. Before the injury occurs, it was zayrik chetz. It's shot like an arrow. After the injury, then it dribbles out. Masha'en came by chaytim, but whether injury or no injury, it's always spilling out. Shloi they krisa eno shofech el mekaleach. But in other words, that it shoots out like an arrow. But fuke high, this would exclude from your nose the idi whether before the injury or after the injury shofechu. Just like a mamza, moisim mokum has to do with what? With the area of procreation. Avkan moisim mokum. Nikiv lamata me'atara. Okay, so when we speak about the atara, guys, lamata means that's away from the body. Lamaila means towards the body. Okay, lamata means away from the body, and lamaila means towards the body. Says the Gemara. So now, we said in the Mishnah that the krushavcha is in the gid itself. It's l'mayla min atara. It's l'mayla min atara. So now he has a hole in the atara, which is not a problem, but the hole goes ahead and it goes angularly to the itself. Says the Gemara. Nikev lamata mi atara shekenegdoi l'mayla mi atara savra pchia bar abba lachshure amle ravasi hachi amre bishum lakesh atara kolshi me'akeves. Any part is ma'akev. In the Mishnah Me'atar, if anything's left over, the Mishnah said, then you're not a Krushavcha. Yosef Rabbeinu Mekumyapoyle, Molei Chut Sho'amru. This is when it said, Yafilu Molei Chut. I'll pay Kuloi, there have to be the whole circumference, or I'll pay Ruba, just the Roy. Vamalei, Rava Tespa said, Rava Tespa Ravina, Molei Chut, I'll pay Ruba, just the majority is enough. The Klape Reisha and towards the head. Amrav Huna Kikomis, a Kshera. Let's say the gid, the cut is in the gid, it's Lamaila Mina Atara, but it's like the shape of a quill, which is diagonal. Kimarzev, the gutter. I don't know exactly how that looks like, but psula. In other words, kikomis kshera, it seems to be, it's not going to affect your ability to have children. But kimarzev, psula, because it's the ear, high sholet be avira. By the marzev, the ear is going to be sholet on the zera, and that's going to stop it from being able to impregnate. The high sholet avira. But over here, where it's cut as a diagonal, it will not stop. For Rav Chisda Amad, no. Rav Chisda is the opposite. Kimarzev kshera, kikomis psula. Why? Because high gorid by highlight gorid. By the kulmis, it's gorid, you're able to go ahead and by the marzev, you're able to have a friction by Mokan, but the kulmis will not be, because it thins out, it will not be able to have friction, and therefore, if you want to have friction, you won't be Masriya Zera. Amarava, Kavasi Huda Mistabra, highlight Shalap Avira, highlight Shalap Avira, therefore marzev will be Asr, and the kulmis will be Mutta. What about the friction drawing out? Like a spigot in a barrel. You put a spigot in a barrel, the top part touches, so therefore who are then the tashmas. Whether it's cut like a quill or like a gutter, it's kasha. Ulamata me Torah lamaila. Do you mean below the Torah or above? It says in Pshita lamaila. It must be above towards the body. Because when you think it's what below the Torah, I feel nichus agid nami. Even the gid also would be. Ravina l'shabush l'meima hubai. Ravina knew that he was just going ahead. He wanted to test Merema. Who uvda the havi ben masa machasi? There was an incident of masa machasya. Shaifa mabar avashi kekulmis. They went ahead and they went ahead and they were able to cut away to like a kulmis for achshrei and they machshrei. Who uvda the havi pumpatisa? There was an incident of pumpatisa. Status guvasa the shchva zera v'ofer b'mokan ketanim. Okay, this is very interesting. There's a concept of nishtana hateva. This is a very big blog material. We know bisman hazeh that the canal that brings out the urine and the zera is the same canal. In those days, it wasn't. So if the one that brought out the zera was stuffed, that the zera would have to go through the canal of the urine, then then the person would be a krishavcha, because that person would not be able to have a child, because if it comes out of that area, it's not going to be fertile. So therefore, this is an example. The Chazon Ish speaks out. This is an example of nishtanu hateva, but a teva change. But this is the case over here. Is status gufsa the shechva zera, the gufsa, the tube that would go ahead and transport the shechva zera got stuffed. The ofik b'mokam ketanim, and the zera was coming out in the place where you urinate. Savra bibar bailach shure. He thought he's going to matter it. So Rapapi mishum. So Rapapi said regarding Rabbi Barbaya, he said mishum da asay mimuli amisa milei mulisa. Machlekes Rashi and Tosfos, but Rashi says Abaye came from the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah, came from the zera of Eli. Eli, they lived a short period of time. So since you were going to live a short period of time, you're saying short things. The Mekomo mevasheles, in its place, it's mevashel. Shlem mekomo mevasheles. In a place that it is, in its place that it cooks, then Then it's okay. And therefore, but a place where it doesn't cook, where it doesn't keep it warm, it will not be. So how could you machsha? Because it's not going to keep it warm if it comes out of the place of urine. And therefore You're incorrect. Wish you all a good luck. Tomorrow, Bez Hashem, we're going to learn in the morning again. Tomorrow will be in the morning. Bez Hashem is Barach.